Welcome to the Cybersecurity Simplified podcast, where we take the mystery out of today's top security threats and solutions. Way back in episode 3, we talked about how extended detection and response, also known as XDR, finds and fixes security issues across your environment, from endpoints and servers to networks and cloud infrastructure. To get this kind of end-to-end protection, many XDR vendors rip and replace your existing, often expensive security tools with their own. But there is a way to avoid forklift upgrades and vendor lock-in. In this episode of Cybersecurity Simplified, we'll show you how to unlock end-to-end security with Open XDR. I'm your co-host, Susanna Song.
And I'm Dave Barton, CTO of Highwire Networks.
Hi, friend. Nice to be back on the pod with you.
It's been a little while, and we're fortunate to have a guest here today. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Brian Stoner. I'm the Vice President of Service Providers here at Stellar Cyber.
Well, welcome to our podcast, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
And David and I, full disclosure here, we talk with Brian on a regular basis because our managed security services platform is the Open XDR platform. So, David, you as a CTO, you speak with Brian more often than I do in marketing. But Brian, tell us a little bit about Stellar and kind of how you guys distinguish yourself in the marketplace.
Yeah, and that's really important for Stellar because it's becoming increasingly, crowded. People are using the XDR terminology quite a bit now. But I think what really differentiates Stellar Cyber is, to us, XDR means everything, right? We want to ingest as much data as we can from as many different sources as we can so that we can put it into our interflow format and then be able to use that data in special ways to detect anomalies that may go unnoticed in other tools.
So Brian, we talk to a lot of partners and end customers, and how much sell are you doing on the XDR idea, right? Because to your point, we got folks jumping on the ship who really aren't XDR, but they're saying they are. And so when you look at the industry, where do you see real XDR? Where does that really fit? And how would our customers know the difference, right? Because what are the things that distinguish a real XDR platform like Stellar and some of these other ones who claim it but really don't do it? What's your advice there for our customers?
So I think you need to look at the source of who you're talking to, right? When we hear XDR, a lot of times we hear it from maybe an endpoint vendor, right? And I was in the EDR market for the last several years. And one of the challenges that the EDR market has is that the cost per endpoint continues to go down, but they're going public and having to drive additional revenue. So they have to find creative ways to do that. So that's why the endpoint market is kind of bending towards XDR, right? Then you've got things like the network protection.
Let me interrupt there. Yeah. Can an endpoint product truly be XDR?
Only if, and here's the big if, you're able to detect things across the entire scope of the customer's environment. If you're looking at the XDR tool itself and the things that the endpoints connect to, you're not connected to the network, you're not connected to the cloud, and you can't really provide a detection that would cross-correlate between all those different areas in the customer's environment. That's the big difference. And that's where Stellar has spent 5 years building specialized detections that cut across all of those things versus having more of a siloed view of things.
So I think you're being politically correct, which I can appreciate. On the flip side, for our listeners, if you don't have visibility at the endpoint and at the network and on the file servers and AD and the firewalls, all the way out to your cloud environments, you don't have XDR. I don't care who the vendor is that's claiming XDR. You have to be thinking about visibility. And I think the second part of that is ease of adding the visibility. While Stellar may not have everything you want from a detection of visibility. They're not an endpoint company. The truth is being able to take an endpoint product and plug it into Stellar and get additional visibility is the value that I think combined Stellar, our EDR platform, and any other EDR platform, that's the true value. And I think the true realization of XDR.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think one of the other ways that you can look at that is that's the core to avoiding vendor lock-in too, right? Because when you can ingest anything from any source, it doesn't matter which endpoint you're using today, right? When Silence came out 5 years ago, it was the premier product. Things have evolved, and now SentinelOne and CrowdStrike and Carbon Black, and there's a lot of different vendors in that space that may be right for your different customers, but
Sure.
you want to help them make the right decision for their business, not necessarily the right decision for you as a service provider. So when you've got Open XDR and you can truly connect into anything and correlate the signals that you're getting from all those different devices into events and incidents, then you're truly reaching what I think XDR was, kind of intended to be.
That's
Okay.
so valuable. I mean, I know from a marketing perspective, you guys recently revealed 4.0 or 4.0. And what captured my attention right away is, people often wonder the X, you hear EDR, MDR, E standing for endpoint, M standing for managed. And then people are like, extended. What does extended really mean? And you guys changed it to everything detection and response. And I think that for a lot of business leaders resonates, right? Really, can you put anything into the platform and you'll be able to, there's visibility on it? Like that to me is that changes, people's entire businesses when it comes to cybersecurity. It's not specifically vendor oriented, it's vendor agnostic, right?
It is. And, we're leveraging graph machine learning, which is a type of machine learning that's been available for many years, but no other vendor has actually used it to correlate all of the different alerts that we're seeing from all these other, disparate products into an actual incident that a human can understand, right? It's actually a diagram of exactly what the attackers did. And the thing is, today, attackers don't just, do a denial of service attack or try to brute force log into your servers or deliver ransomware. They do all of these things in combination so that while you're busy trying to, stop a ransomware attack on the back end, they could be dumping your SQL database and, sending it out a DNS tunnel that they created 6 months ago. So unless you've got the ability to take in data from all those different areas and make sense of it, it's really, really difficult to detect those things. As good as your SOC is, David, we have to stay on top of our game to help your team be effective as well.
That's absolutely right. At the end of the day, without our relationship, we wouldn't be as effective as we are. And, to Susanna's point, that's why our team is constantly talking with your team to help. When we see things that don't make sense, you guys help explain it. When we need you to add more functionality into detections or integrations, you go build them for us. It's been a great relationship, and I would like to think that we will continue to change the marketplace by working closely together and taking XDR from this idea 5 years ago of let's pull a lot of things in to let's pull everything in. Let's go get logs from IoT devices. Let's pull in ATM logs from the banking system and look for, anomalies. We have that ability. And that's one of the reasons that we think Stellar is uniquely positioned to help us get there.
I agree. And I think, as evidence of some of that, right, when Kaseya hit, right, the attack against the Kaseya product, there were, within 48 hours, 1,200 different command and control websites associated just with that one breach, right? And
that we know of.
Exactly. And so our threat team worked with your team on anybody who had that product and helped them understand the signals that were being put out even before it was kind of formally announced.
That's right.
And we gave you the threat intel so that as a team, we could help ensure that your customers were not impacted from that situation, right?
Yes.
Similar thing happened with SolarWinds as well.
That's right.
I have a question for you, Brian. How difficult, someone who's listening right now, who's like, I like this, I like XDR, I like what I'm listening to. I mean, is it literally taking it out of the box and you can have your IT department, 1 to 5 guys handle it? Or do you need a team, a 24/7 team, in your opinion? How does it work?
Well, so you will get more out of the technology the more you know about security, right? And so we actually don't sell direct to enterprise customers. We do everything through partners. Yeah. Anytime we talk to a customer who either we feel doesn't have the expertise or the manpower, that's somebody that we would refer to Highwire Networks, right? Because you guys have that team, right? So there's really two things at play here. One is the technology makes it easier, but two, domain expertise and security is absolutely required to get the most out of the tool. And that's why, to David's point, as we collaborate on, if you just added this, log source, we could detect this. Or if you added this detection, we could catch this faster, right? And so that's the collaboration that we have with our partners. And so, in any security product, you really need to have that security domain expertise. So I think if you don't have a SOC, right, it makes a lot of sense to partner up with somebody that has that domain expertise until you can either grow to the point where you can afford to build that yourself, or you could even leverage Highwire Networks to augment your team, right? A lot of people have a small, 1 or 2 man security team, but can't watch it 24/7. And when do the attackers attack your customers? They do it in the middle of the night when nobody's working, right? So that's where partnering with Highwire, even if you're augmenting your staff or outsourcing it, makes a lot of sense.
So anything else that you want to tell us about? I know XDR, especially what you guys are doing at Stellar, constantly evolving, improving the client experience. Anything you want to share with what's happening over at Stellar?
Well, so we've been, really busy, obviously, with our 4.0 release, which added that incident management, component to the platform. In that release, we also introduced our Open XDR kill chain, which is,
right.
It's actually the MITRE attack framework, but it's been enhanced leveraging machine learning detections that we've created at each different level of the MITRE attack framework to give additional visibility into the practitioners as to what the attackers are doing, and also to make it higher efficacy, right? So we want to pinpoint exactly what they're doing that you need to stop versus just telling you, hey, they did, they looked at your network. They tried to, compromise an endpoint. That's great. How did they do it? What exactly did they do?
Right.
And how anomalous was that in your environment?
Well, and who else did they talk to? And that whole correlation picture,
Mm-hmm.
Don't lose sight of the fact that 4.1 is going to bring some additional ability for us as practitioners to trace back as far as we can to get all the data to truly understand the scope, right? To your point, Brian, a single knock on the door is not as important. I mean, it's important, don't get me wrong, but it's not as important as knowing that somebody's hitting your whole neighborhood at the same time, right? Because, well, I don't even know what a good scenario is there, but they're knocking on all the doors at the same time, trying to sell Girl Scout cookies, right? Knowing that lets me know that they're coming to my door next, or more importantly, they're trying all the doors in my house. So I think that's huge. The correlation piece, the investigative piece, is going to help differentiate Stellar's XDR even more so.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that we've been collaborating with your team on is, how can we improve our reporting, right? Because that's really the way that you demonstrate that you found these things, that you understand what's happening, and that you can improve the risk posture of your customers. So we're working very hard to provide some enhanced reporting in our next release. And we're looking to begin to open up the creation of connectors and parsers to our partners like Highwire Networks, because we only have so much bandwidth to create them.
That's
If
right.
we open that up to you and we can leverage your team's expertise, then there's a force multiplier there of all of our partners being able
Agree.
to make the platform even more open faster. So that's another key thing that we're working on. So stay tuned for that.
And without having, the demo to share on the screen, really quick, Brian or David, because David, you're very well versed in the Open XDR platform. What do you see? Like, what can you get when you look through your solution?
Well, I think, to David's point, what you really get, right, is you get a full picture of what's happening. And, most SIM solutions, you're using rules-based detections, right? And a rule you either trip the rule or you don't. It's kind of a binary thing, right? And the hard thing to do is to, create enough rules so that you can detect all of these things that the machine learning is able to learn on its own, right? So when you compare the power of what we're able to do leveraging, Highwire Networks with our platform to another SOC that just needs more and more people to create more and more rules, which creates more and more false alerts and things like that. What we're really doing is kind of revolutionizing cybersecurity in that we're simplifying it by connecting all of these things. So correlating the alerts into an event is one thing. Correlating events into an incident is entirely another thing. And then being able to score those incidents and prioritize them for the SOC reduces that mean time to detection and helps, Highwire Networks provide a superior ability to detect threats for your customers. So I think that's really the key. And not only that, but once you detect them, the automation that's built into the platform allows them to, instead of having to go log into a firewall in 20 locations, they can push a block rule out to all those firewalls with the click of a button, or with an automated rule if it's something that you want to make sure never happens again. So
Right.
there's so many powerful things built into the platform. Again, with the right security expertise, can make such a difference for your customers.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot to explore around Open XDR. Thank you, Brian Stoner from Stellar Cyber, for joining us in this podcast. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. I've been really enjoying getting a lot of feedback through email and also on our YouTube channel. If you have feedback for Brian or for David or the Overwatch team, please contact us at marketing@highwirenetworks.com. And be sure to join us for our next episode, EDR, reducing risk of anywhere work. Until next time, I'm Susanna Song.
And I'm Dave Barton.
And this is Cybersecurity Simplified. From all of us here at Overwatch by Highwire Networks, thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Cybersecurity Simplified podcast. To learn more, visit us at highwirenetworks.com/podcast.